Great to see you. I'm Stacey Wilson-Hunt from New York Magazine and Vulture, and I'm very honored to be here today to talk to one of my favorite people of all time, Walton Goggins.
What a comfortable crowd. Look at the couches. This is fantastic.
Very intimate. Very intimate.
Yes, it is intimate. Yes, let's get intimate. Does anybody have any wine?
We're going to get deep.
Any charcuterie?
We're going to get deep. So, I know a lot about you.
You do know a lot about me.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to pare down what I know about you for the half-hour version. So this is going to be difficult.
If you guys get bored, you're more than welcome to walk out. You guys are so okay.
You will not be bored, I promise. So you had the unique experience of growing up in Georgia. And I'd love to know, how would you describe your childhood? It was an unconventional childhood.
Yeah. I mean, I was, it was a bunch of crazy women, and me, to be quite honest with you, is my mother and her 4 sisters, and my grandmother and my cousin, who happens to be a powerful female, and it was in the conservative South, like the Bible Belt, and my mother was kind of a seeker, really, and a Paramhansa Yogananda devotee, and an aunt was an actress, and another aunt was a publicist for like B.B. King and Phyllis Diller. And so it was this very kind of unconventional way of kind of growing up in this, what would otherwise be a relatively kind of restrictive, theological place, right? And but it was.
So you didn't go to church and stuff like that.
I did, yeah. No, I went to all the church. I went to, foot washing Baptist. I went to snake handling Baptist. I went to Pentecostal, and then I went to sweat lodges, and like 6 years old, just kind of sitting outside.
You had a good spectrum of experiences on that.
It was, yeah, and it was it was a very different time in Atlanta. I don't know if any of you have been to Atlanta. Have you worked in Atlanta? Have you guys been down there? Yeah. There's a lot going on now, and it was a different time when I grew up there. It was like a city of 1 million people. It was a lot like Austin, Texas, and it was extremely progressive, in a lot of ways. And it was a wonderful place to grow up because it was only 18 miles out of downtown Atlanta, so you had exposure to all of this culture downtown, and yet you had this real kind of front porch culture, on the periphery of Atlanta, where people really kind of sat outside and they talked. You didn't watch a bunch of television. You didn't have anything to stave away boredom except for stories. So you would go and you'd get lost, and before you were inundated with text messaging or feeling like you need to be available to other people's Instagram posts. It was a different time, and it's weird to say that it's a different time because I'm only 45 years old, so I feel like I'm 16. It's very strange to think that it was not so long ago when life was a little simpler.
And your aunt was a performer, and she was sort of in cabarets, like around in the area.
Yeah,
and
she did a lot of musical theater. Yeah, okay. she
and you would watch her. You would go and see her shows.
Yeah. Well, not like the very first time I think I went to see her was in. She did equity stages, kind of like all over the East Coast, up and down the East Coast. And I couldn't. The very first time I kind of went, it was actually in Birmingham, Alabama, in a dinner theater, right? Like old school, and my feet, couldn't touch the ground. And it was my Aunt Joan and my Uncle Mark, and I remember kind of walking in this room, much like this. It was a dark space with all of these people, and I'd never been in a room quite like this before. And I thought, like, what are all these people? Are all these people here to see my aunt and uncle too? Like, what are they doing? Are they all like my cousins that I've never met or something? And then my aunt and uncle like walked out on stage, just like this, and pretended to be somebody other than who they were. And I couldn't understand it. I think like literally the first thing that I said was, Aunt Joan! Uncle Mark, what are you guys doing? That's not your name. You guys aren't those people. But everybody started, laughing, and then, by the end of it, people started crying, and I think, on some level, just kind of being in that space and watching the power to manipulate emotion, and listening to an audience leave a space and what they took from that experience, like forever changed me. It's like, wow, I want to do that. I want to be that. I want to participate in that conversation. And that's kind of what it's always been for me.
And tell me a little bit about Shay Griffin. She was an important figure in getting you opportunities for acting when you were younger, and you had quite an audacious meeting with her at one point.
Yeah, well, there was a, there was a woman. Her name is, she was a casting director, Shay Griffin, in Atlanta, and she wasn't just pivotal in my career and like the career of like Kyle Chandler, and almost my partner Ray McKinnon, and almost every actor or performer that came out of Georgia. She was it. Like, she was the nucleus for all the talent, really not just in Atlanta but in the Southeast. Everybody went through her. And when I kind of was of age, like 14 years old, I walked into my mom, got home from work, and I said, listen, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be an actor. That's pretty much what I'm going to do. I've decided to do that, and I've looked in the Yellow Pages, and there's a woman named Shay Griffin, and she's downtown, and everybody just keeps talking about her, so I need to go meet this woman. And she said, yeah, okay. I said, no, I just need you to drive me, just take me down there. She said, do you have an appointment? I don't need an appointment. Just take me down. And so the next day, she did. She went into work late, and she took me down to this woman's office, and I just kind of knocked on the door, and there's a woman like behind the counter, and she said, yes, how can I help you? I said, yes, you can help me. My name is Walton Goggins, and I'd like to speak to Shay Griffin. Do you have an appointment? I don't need an appointment. What do you want to talk to her about? Well, what do you think I want to talk to her about? What is it that you do here? You hire actors to tell stories. You're storytellers, so that's why I'm here. I just need to talk to her about storytelling. So if you don't mind, please just go get her, and I'll wait right here. And she did, like the audacity, I think this like 14-year-old kid, she just thought, I think it was like a Jedi mind trick or something.
She's like, I gotta meet this kid,
or either
whoever
she like walked in there and said, I think I need to call security. There's this very strange 14-year-old boy sitting outside. And she did. She invited me in, and very quickly became a dear friend. And really, I think for her, she understood that I was in it for reasons that didn't revolve around notoriety, or I don't even know what a celebrity is really. I don't read those rags. I don't really know what that is. But a guy who was just motivated to tell stories and genuinely didn't know how to do it. And I said, I don't know, but I know you know things that I don't know, so I want to learn from you, and I think that's, you can always get somebody, on your side when you say that they know more than you do, which is very true.
Although it would be very hard today to walk into a casting office and pull that shenanigan.
But you can walk on a set. In a minute.
If you can get past security, of course. Security is always
that's
the issue.
that's right. Yeah.
Right.
No, I was just talking about walking into a space where people know more than you do. Because I think people always know more than you do.
Defer to others' expertise.
That's
right. Good. So I know Murder in Mississippi was a turning point for you getting that role. Did you have a sense of that Hollywood sort of took notice of you after there was a TV movie with Blair Underwood? Did you have a sense that, I'm in the system now and people know me?
That's such it's a great question, and I get asked that question a lot, and even with friends that are cast in a new series, right, a new television show, and I have such a different relationship to that now. No, like I was 17 years old. It was back when they still made movies of the week. And it was all of those people, and it won 5 or 6 Golden Globes, and CCH Pounder was in it, who I would later work with on The Shield, and a lot of those people. But I think you quickly realize, or else you should realize that it's not like a single shot, right, that makes your career. It's in the aggregate. I mean, it's about the experience, and if you own that and not just any one individual job, then that's a recipe for happiness. And on that job, there was a guy who was on the same level that I was, and his name was Jonathan Watson. And Jonathan he was just a PA, just a guy, and he was just in charge of me. So he wasn't that important. Like, you just make sure he gets to set on time. Well, that guy, Jonathan Watson, rose to be one of the biggest first ADs in the business, right? And I've worked with him 4 or 5 times over the years. And then he actually segued into producing for Danny and like Franco and that whole group, and produced this season, and now is kind of finally directing his first movie. So you never know who you're going to meet with or who you're going to work with, like, you know, very early in your career, and people just keep circling back around if you can.
Should always be nice to everyone.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You never know when they're going to be able to hire you in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have a lot of great stories about moving to LA, working at the boot store, your own valet business, which I so many stories, you guys. But one story in particular that I love is the next Karate Kid audition when you didn't get the part. And this is a great story because it shows your resilience and how you were able to go back to the people you auditioned for and make a case for yourself. So I wonder if you could tell that story.
Yeah, you know, I guess all of this is advisable today. I mean, 2017 is so weird, man. It's all so weird. But yeah, I was like, you know, my mother we were poor. We were really, really poor. and this was an opportunity to be in the next Karate Kid with Hilary Swank. And it was the lead bad guy, right? That's what I'm still doing. I'm just kidding. But this, I was a kid. I was like 21 years old. And it came down to me and this other guy, a wonderful actor by the name of Michael Cavalieri. And you know, we were both kind of circling each other. I'm sure you guys know that, you know, when you're just like, I'm going to fucking psych you out. I see you, I'm going to psych you out. And I think he was psyching me out. But I went in first and I thought, well, that was it. You know, this job is mine. You may as well go home. And then he went in and then started screaming. You know, and he got the job and I didn't, and it was, you know, it was Chris Kane was directing. It was a pretty big, you know, big movie at the time, and I remember I just kind of started walking and I just thought, like, don't show them your emotion, don't give it up here, man. Just you're okay, you'll be all right. And his assistant ran out and said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just going to go back to selling boots. I'm good. I'm fine. Everything's okay. I'm just going to go back to the boot store." And I did that. I went to Wilshire on Wilshire Boulevard. It was Thieves Market, and started selling boots. And this person came up and asked me, you know, for a random size 7 and a lizard, you know. And I said, "You know what? I'm sorry. I'm not going to get you boots for you. You know, I'm not." And I walked over to the phone and I called Warner Brothers and I said, you know, can I get this person's office? And they answered, and I said, "Listen, I know that I didn't get the role, and I'm okay with that. But again, you know, I just want to learn, and this is a room full of people that have a lot of things to teach me, and can I audition for the best friend, like the bad guy's friend?" And they said, you would do that, and I said, "Yeah, of course I would do that." And he put the phone on his shoulder, and he was talking to Jerry Weintraub, actually was the producer, and Chris said, "Jerry, you know, Walton came back on the phone and said, the job is yours, you got it." And that was it, and it was like 3.5 months, and it was Hillary's kind of first big thing, and we all just
You and Hillary had both grown up similar circumstances, so you had kids who came from nothing sort of working together, which is very cool.
Yeah, you get a lot of gratitude, you know, I think, or you should be rooted in gratitude when that's where you come from.
Billy Bob had a similar sentiment when he was here recently. He shared
yes,
that
he
as
does,
well.
Yeah.
So speaking of Billy Bob, the Apostle, which I know was a big moment for you, tell me a little bit about getting cast in that and working with Duvall, and you also said that you kind of thought that movie would create another sort of big launch pad, and you told me a little bit about how it was at Toronto. But maybe just talk about how it was a stepping stone to then, obviously, not long after that was The Shield, and then Justified followed. But what was it like specifically to work with some of your heroes in the South, telling a Southern story?
Well, yeah, that was a really big turning point for me, the Apostle, and you know, I worked with this teacher I had 2 teachers out here. A guy named David LeGrant and another incredible man named Harry Mastro George, and he really, both of them changed my life. But Harry just really kind of quoted 3 or 4 people, and it was Tony Hopkins and Robert Duvall and Jessica Tandy, and just kept kind of regurgitating these things that they have said over and over again, which is, what is it that we're asking ourselves to do? And it's child's game, you know, and turn yourself over to an imaginary set of circumstances. So when I had the opportunity to kind of get that, when I found out that I got it, it was back when there was still tapes, right? You know, and you had here answering machine. There was a a message on my phone from Bobby. Hey, and he said, hey Walton, I can't wait. Yeah, he called me himself, and he said, hey, I can't wait for you to get down here, man. Let's go to dinner and let's sit and let's talk. And then when I did get down there, it was pretty extraordinary. Kind of the first day that I got there, I walked up and it just happened to be kind of filming on a Saturday. If you've never seen the movie, you should. It's an incredible performance that he gives. But there was a tent revival, and I'm just kind of watching all of these Pentecostal preachers from all over the South, because Bobby hired a lot of real people, and a lot of those, like David Gordon Green, hires a lot of like local non-actors, and this happened to be one of those situations, and it was, you felt like the Holy Ghost power, you felt like people kind of coming to God kind of in this way, and it was extraordinary to watch, and then there was a guy, we were riding home to a shitty Holiday Inn like in the middle of Lafayette, Louisiana, and we're going home, and the driver looks back at all of these preachers, and he says, that peace that you guys were talking about today, like I want that in my life. Like, I don't care who it's by. I just want to find some peace. And they all jumped over, like hit me in the head, jumped over, took this guy out, and then they were, they did their thing, like to him, and like in their way, their version of it. And it was extraordinary to kind of watch that. And then the very next day, Bobby invites me to his house for only about 20 people, and it was there was June Carter Cash was in the movie too, and it just so happened that it was a very intimate party with Duvall and June Carter Cash and the Man in Black, Johnny. And they played for 5 hours, and I'm this kid, listening to this music, and everybody else was kind of up and walking around, and I just didn't move for 5 hours. I couldn't believe it, and it was over the course of that I really, he became a real mentor to me, and probably the most influential person in my life up until that point, and confirmed what I thought it was I was asking myself to do, and was. And yeah, it was an extraordinary man. And I'll end this by saying this one thing. At the end of this entire experience, and it went to Toronto, and it was kind of a big deal. And and I remember somebody leaning. I was 24 years old or 23 years old when we filmed it, something like that. And I remember somebody leaning over to me, because it's there and it's happening. And the man got nominated for an Academy Award for it. Like, it's all happening. And somebody leaned over and said, "Hey man, this is it. Like, this is it, man. You're gonna work. Like, this is you. It's your time." And then nothing happened. But in the middle of nothing happening, because I thought, well, oh my God, I know there are publicists. I need a publicist. I just need people to know. I need to pay somebody a lot of money so they can go out there and say that there was this guy in this movie up in Toronto that's about Robert Duvall, but still he was good in it. But you should write about him. And
I get pitches like that every day.
Every day, and I was like, and I called this producer who's still a very good friend of mine, Mark, and I said, "Look, man, oh my God, this is happening. All this stuff is happening. I need to get a publicist. What am I doing? I'm running around like I'm crazy. I need it. What do I need?" And he said, "You just need to relax." And he said, "Don't you understand that there is nothing that you will ever get from anybody that you didn't already get from Robert Duvall? And that you've seen the movie, the man edited it in a way in which you will forever have that movie in your repertoire. That will forever be a part of your experience, because he loves you and he loves your talent. It's not about that. It's about going to work every single day and leaving everything on the field." And that conversation, that singular conversation on a phone from a guest house in Glendale, from me, changed my life and changed my expectations of it, and kind of put everything in its proper perspective.
Very well said. So I wish we had time to go over The Shield, Justified. I mean, you have so much content, it's almost overwhelming. But I want to make sure we talk about vice principals. So I remember right before premiere last summer, you said, "This is the fucking craziest thing I've ever been in." And then I watched it and I was like, yeah, I see that now. Your character is so odd. There's like this effeminate sort of bow tie, like dandy thing going on with him.
Yeah.
I'm probably not the first person to question his sexual orientation. But where was Lee born from? That was not a very well constructed sentence, but how much of that was you? How much of that was Jody and Danny writing him to be like that? Like the wardrobe, everything, you know, what was the creation process for him?
Well, you know, first and foremost, I think that Danny and Jody and David Gordon Green are just they're doing things that no one's doing in comedy. You know, they're just this satellite Woody Allen, if you will, and their stuff is so confrontational and so inflammatory, but the issues that they deal with are, you know, especially in Vice Principals, are so prescient. I mean, they're of this moment, and they're filmmakers and writers that don't they like comedy, you know, but they're really kind of in the school of Scorsese or any one of those kind of dramatic kind of directors, and so they would themselves say that they don't write comedy; they write dramas that happen to be funny occasionally, right?
There's like a tragic element to a lot of the stuff. I mean, Kenny Powers was a very tragic figure. Yeah. I mean, you watch that and it's actually incredibly sad. I mean, I didn't laugh that much watching him because it was actually very sad.
Yeah, and I think the same, you know, I think there's, you know, but it is fun. I mean, there's some funny shit. There's some funny shit going on. But it is. I agree with you, and I think you know, when I first kind of talked to Danny on the phone, he called when we were doing the Hateful Eight, and I had read it, and I just had never read anything like that I could really sink my teeth into that way, and it was written that he had frosted tips, and he said the first thing he said to me was, "Hey man, you don't have to frost your tips." I said, "Oh no, we're frosting the fucking tips. No, the tips would be frosted." For sure, and I just kind of went into this thing for him, you know, because
quite a departure after working with Quentin on Hateful Eight and Django, like sort of these hyper masculine characters, and then, you know, channeling your inner bow tie guy.
Yeah, you know, and I really wanted to kind of get away from that. You know, I think that's the same thing with Venus for me. I played this transgender on Sons of Anarchy.
Oh yes, we know.
Thank you
yes.
very much. But it was really like, okay, well, you know, not that I didn't want to be put into a box by other people. I didn't want to put myself into a box. It's like, well, does this scare you? Yeah, man, this really scares me. Okay, all right, well then let's go here. Let's go over here. But it was just, I think that's the thing about good writing, and I don't know how you guys feel about that. But when it's there, then for me it becomes very very easy in a way. It's just like, okay, yeah, I understand this, and it's all, you know, it's child's play. I mean, we all live in our imagination. It's really nothing more complicated than that. So for me, reading it, and I read a script 200 or 300 times. I read it over and over and over again, which then just kind of allows you to, like his walk or his thing, all of those things just kind of, they just happen. And he could have done something different, and that would have been different, and that would have been okay with me too. You know, it just so happened that was kind of the manifestation of what it was that Danny wrote, and the freedom and the courage that he had, the courage that it took him, and the freedom that he gave me to do, you know, whatever it is that I wanted. Because all of that was scripted. I mean, we improvised a lot. But it always came back to the text.
Many, like, shit talking and insults. I mean, how much of that is you just
going? I
mean,
I think that was kind of like one of the most intimidating things for me, because those guys are so good at that. You know, Danny is so good at it, and so like all of my improv usually happen when no one's looking. I'm at home, just like, you fucking improv, Walton. Write it all down. Write all your improvs down. And but what that allows you to do is it allows you the freedom to say, okay, well now I understand this, and all of a sudden I'm speaking, because I think as soon as you understand who that is and you turn yourself over to being this person you're playing pretend, then there is nothing that comes out of your mouth that is wrong, as long as it doesn't come from ego.
And what was it like to segue from that production to Six, which could not be more different? Very harrowing, very, you know, intense material. What was it like to inhabit that character?
Well, you know,
just emotionally.
To kind of go back really, really quickly, the thing that I did say to Danny is, I said, listen, this is a tragically flawed human being, and to be superfluous about either one of these people's deep insecurity would be doing a disservice to them, and it's not what they would do anyway. And it was always, I think it's always about mining kind of the truth of the situation, and giving yourself the freedom to articulate that in a creative space, you know, with a director or with the person that you have the right to do that, you know, as long as the sun's not going down and you only have one more take left, you better get it, you better knock it out. And so that was really kind of the conversation, you know, for me about that, and it's no different really than anything that I do now. And Six was Six became very, very, very personal to me, because I have my politics, and I try to leave my politics at home for the most part, and I come from a place in this country where military is the only option, for a lot of people, and rural America. That's how you get out, and so all of my friends, for the most part, I would say 8 out of 10 went into the first Iraq War, and so for me, I said, well, no, I'm not good at following directions. I can't. I don't like anyone telling me what to do. So I went west. I went to California, and then to kind of come back to this, when I read it for the first time, and it was Bill Broyles and who wrote Apollo 13 and Castaway, and a number of these movies, Jarhead. When we were talking about it on the phone for the first time, they said, well, I think this guy's done some questionable things, and I said, no, man, no, he hasn't. This is a fucking war criminal. Like, honestly, let's just be honest about it. Let's start from there, and then we can have a real conversation. And he said, okay, let's start from there. I said, so, I'm interested, if you want me to participate, this is what I'm interested, the story that I'm interested in telling. And I just want to make sure that it lines up with the story that you want to tell, because I didn't want to be used as a piece of propaganda for American foreign policy. I wanted to to honor the sacrifice of the men and women in military service in our country and in every country, to be quite honest with you, and take them from out in front of the flag, and to say, well, wait a minute, this is hard. It's hard being an actor. It's hard. It's just what we do. It's just hard to walk through your day. It's not easy to leave your home. Even when you're working, it's not easy to leave your home. Life is hard, but we're not getting shot at. And so we don't deal with the pressures that they deal with, and to show kind of the journey of this guy, Rip Taggart, and his walk to redemption, and at the end of it, not have all the answers, but have more answers than he started with, and is able to kind of ask the right questions. So that was really that experience for me, and I'm very proud of it. For me. It changed me in a lot of ways.
What would you say are the biggest misconceptions about stories like this in America? Because we do see a very one-sided version, if these stories are told at all, which I think is a huge value of a piece like this. But what do you think people get wrong about the military? Because it is so closely aligned with the current administration or war, but it's bigger than that. It's a family. It's, like you said, it's a refuge for people who don't have other options. Yeah,
I mean, it's no different than when you talk about subcultures in America or in any country. I mean, I think the military is the same. And while I've never been in the military, I've hung out with a lot of people that are from the military, and I see this love and camaraderie and humor and a shared sense of humor, right? I mean, even people from Los Angeles, so we have our own shared sense of humor about Los Angeles, and that's what I found in that community, and I also found that if you're open with them, because I didn't hide it, I was asked to go to dinner, we had like 3 Navy SEAL tech advisors, and these guys had just gotten out of like a 20-year career, and this is the real deal. These guys are the real thing, and one of the main guys said, okay, well, you get to go to dinner with me. You get one, to have a conversation, and we go to dinner, and you can ask me anything you want. And I said, okay, sure. Okay, I'll go. And he said, okay, we're here. What do you want to ask me? I said, I'm only going to ask you one question, mate. And if you don't answer it honestly, then I'm just going to pay the bill and I'm going to get up and leave. And no harm, no foul. I'm not going to ask you about how many people you've killed. I'm not going to ask you how you felt emotionally about it. I'm not going to ask you what you think is right and wrong. I'm going to ask you this one question. And he said, okay, ask it. I said, why do you feel the need to make a joke every time somebody says something serious? Really? That's it. Waiting. I said, you don't have to answer it, and you don't have to answer it honestly, and this can be over, and it's not a problem. And he looked at me, and he answered it. I can't give you the answer because it's personal. But, and that began the conversation, like a real conversation about everything that's going on beyond, you know, a political party affiliation or who's right and who's wrong. You know, it's about, you know, the sacrifice of these people, and you don't get out. You don't segue between a military life and a civilian life without it rubbing off in either direction.
He's probably never been asked a question like that before.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Maybe you changed his perspective on things.
He's still a very, very, very good friend of mine.
So he wasn't put off by it.
Not at all. No.
By the call for brutal honesty.
Yeah, that's right.
So we have a bunch of good audience questions. I want to make sure we get to them.
They better be good.
They are very good.
I'll be the judge of that.
Well, as I always say, we vet them in advance. So,
okay.
we make sure to weed out
Vetted by Stacey, you got it.
All right, Kevin. Where's Kevin today? Kevin? Hello, Kevin.
Hey, man. What's up, Kevin?
Kevin would like to know, what was it like adjusting to working with someone known for comedy and improv like Danny? We talked a little bit about this, as opposed to working in drama and having spent so much time in dramatic shows like Justified and The Shield.
Well, you know, I don't know if you guys feel this way, or you know how many of these conversations you've been to, or what other people say, but I would say that the moment that you feel that you have nothing to worry about is the moment you need to do something else, you know, with your life, honestly. And I can say, for me, it was no different than walking into to a room which was a reading for The Hateful Eight with Quentin, who's a friend of mine. We did Django together, and but before I walked into this room, and I'll get back to Danny in just a second, it kind of ties into it, that I was there, I'd gotten off a plane, everybody else was there, and I was walking up the stairs, I was running late, and you don't run late for Quentin. You're fine, you know, you have to be on time, and it's like, well, I hope, you know, if the plane connection, he's like, I don't give a shit about the plane connection, that's your problem, that's not mine. I said, but I made it, and I got upstairs, and I almost passed out. I had to pause on the door because on the other side of this door was, it was Quentin and Sam Jackson and Kurt Russell and Michael Madsen and Tim Roth and you know, these and Bruce, yeah, these giants, and I just wanted to vomit, you know, for a second, and then I, you know, again, I put my shoulders back and I did something that Michael Chiklis taught me very early on in The Shield, and in the moments that he kind of feels that, you know, he has this mantra, this thing that he says to himself, and he says, you know, my worst fucking day, you know, which is the truth. I'm there to play, and I'm not there to be right or to be wrong. I'm not there to be better than or less than. I'm there to honor what it is that I'm asking myself to do, which is to play pretend with other people. And so Quentin said, "You ready?" I said, "I was born ready." Action, call action, and he did it. And the same thing happened with Danny. You know, like he's a giant, and to meet him, you would never be intimidated by him, but to be a fan of his work the way that I am a fan of his work, you would be incredibly intimidated by him. And the same thing kind of applied. You know, with Bill Murray. In the very first scene, in the first episode, I mean, I couldn't speak, you know, and I've been doing this a long time, and still, it was like, okay, but call action, here we go, you know, and but yeah, hopefully that answered it.
That was great. I would have loved to have been in the room for that reading, by the way. That must have been
cool room.
It's a lot of testosterone behind those doors, I had a feeling. So this is from Ryan. Where's Ryan today? Hello, Ryan. This is a great question, and you and I have talked a lot about this in the past. What do writers often tend to get wrong about characters from the South? And how do you approach playing characters with affliction or racism or other serious flaws? It's a great question.
That's a great question. I think that's changing, but I think, you know, for a very long time, you know, often, like even in the animated kind of movies, you know, if you want the dumbass, just let him speak with a Southern accent. You know, like I think in Cars, it was like the redneck truck or what, you know, whatever that is, you know. And so
it was Larry the Cable Guy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
who played him. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's this real like kind of misconception of the South, and that wasn't my experience. I mean, I grew up in a very kind of liberal household with a lot of interesting people, and so a lot of like literary people with very, very sharp wit and sharp sense of humor, and so you know, I kind of set out to. With my partner, and we made 4 movies, and we were very lucky. We won the Academy Award for a short film that we made, and then one of them was in, you know, Sundance Dramatic Competition and Austin Film Festivals and all of that. But it was really kind of to make people see something from you know, a different side, and the South from a different side, because wasn't my experience of it, and I feel that it's very, very important for every region of every country, but certainly in our country, every sexual orientation, every theology that we have, all the different whatever that is, that it's important to see your views reflected in the art around you, and that was kind of the, you know, one of my main motivations for doing Justified, was to show what it's like in rural America, and to repaint, you know, people's experience of rural America, and I think that, you know, both Tim and I and Graham Yost, our you know, our creator, and I think we did a good job of that. As far as the other question that you have, and I think it's such a great question. You know, I hear people, and I'll never forget this. I'll never forget this moment. I was asked to do a play reading, right? A stage reading of a soldier's story, and it was up in Laurel Canyon. This was a long time ago. This was almost like 15 years ago, and Harry Lennox, who's an incredible actor and a really good friend of mine, was playing the lead role, and it was just a great group of black actors and white actors. It was very, very cool, and I was, you know, I was just there, and this was like literally 17 years ago, and I had to use the N-word, you know, like that's what it is. And you know, I'm a liberal dude from the South, and with a lot of black friends, and then after the play was over, we were walking back up, and this woman turned to me and said, you know, you said that word a little too good, you know, it was a little too convincing, and I got so angry. I was so angry. I said, how dare you say that to me? And I mean this for every single person you see, like in Schindler's List, all those Germans, you can bet that most of those Germans are liberal dudes living this avant-garde kind of actor's life, you know. And I think that it takes incredible courage to be the guy, to stand there and to say these things that are so antithetical to his nature, but for me, and over the course of my career, until I had the freedom not to take those jobs anymore, it came down to I'm doing a service, you know, for history, and it's a part of it, and I play a very big part of that, by sacrificing and by making myself feel extremely uncomfortable. And my black friends that I'm working with, and I think, you know, all too often that doesn't kind of get mentioned, you know, for people that are asked to sacrifice in a moment, you know, their own moral code.
Agreed.
How about that?
Yeah, very good. Agreed. Certainly.
Next time, shake their hand and say thank you. Thank you for doing that.
There's definitely been a lot of discussion about the N-word as of late. It's a kind of never-ending part of our culture, I think, which is...
You know, I've been in South Africa for 5 months, so I really don't... I mean, I just came from the third world country to this first world country. I'm still just trying to find my way. I've only been back for 8 days.
Culture clash.
I'm about to go to sleep right now.
He's asleep right now. So Senta, where's Senta? Hello. Senta would like to ask... And first say, you make very strong choices with your characters. How do you work on your scripted craft characters for the audition itself? And do you have any other audition tips that have worked for you?
Well, you know, how do I answer this question? I mean, I haven't auditioned in a while, but I would, and I say this, and I really mean it, that there is no art to auditioning. Like, to me, you know, that's was never kind of how I approached it. It is no different than actually doing it, than getting hired and going to work. It's the same thing, and to remember that moment is for you. You know, that's a very sacred space for you, and to read your material not like 8 times or 3 times or 12 times or 50 times. Read it 150 times. Read it 200 times, and see. And people say, "Oh my God, wow. Well, really? Well, then maybe you should be doing something else, because that's the commitment that it takes. You know, that's the work. That's doing the work." And what that allows you is a deep understanding of the world way beyond the words. So there's nothing that can throw you. There is nothing, no gesture, there's no sound. There's nothing that, because you're living it, you're in it, and you've crossed over that Rubicon from the world in which actors play in, and the world in which storytellers are just telling a story. Like my 6-year-old is the greatest actor I know. Really, when he says he's a volcanologist, he means it. He's actually going down in a volcano until he wants to stop playing that game because he wants a popsicle, you know. And so I think that the same thing applies to, you know, to an audition. You know, read it over and over and over and over and over again. And
but isn't there a risk, and the more you read something, the more you realize how terribly written it is?
You know, then you overcome terrible writing. You know, because you know, there are a million different ways to say I love you. There's a million different ways to say hello. You know, my teacher, you know, kind of said this, that, you know, what all of these guys have said, and what Tony Hopkins said, and Robert Duvall, and that it's a child's game. Turn yourself over to an imaginary set of circumstances and read the script 300 times. That's it. And so I've worked with most of my heroes at this point, and I did a movie with Tony Hopkins, and we became friends, and I really loved that man, and he said the same thing, and I said, "Do you really read it 250 times? Like, really?" And he said, "Oh yeah, well, you know." I said, "No." He said, "No, I read it 300, you know, but sometimes I'll read it like 250. Sometimes if I'm tired." And I said, "Well, what if you're just walking into, like, what if you're just walking in and you're just ordering, like, getting some bread from a 7-Eleven? You just walk into a nice coffee shop and you just say, 'I just want a pan of chocolate. Could I have a pan of chocolate?'" Like, I can get that on the day, right? Can I just get a pan of chocolate? And he said, "No, maybe I'll read that 215 times. Because can I have a pan of chocolate can mean a million things. And then if you're not result oriented and you're there to just, you know, what am I thinking right now before these words come out of my mouth? And then when you read something 300 times, what it allows you to do, it allows you to have the thought as opposed to remembering a line. You know, there are no lines, they're just thoughts. And so that's what I'd say about an audition. I mean, I have long-winded answers. Like, just give me like a yes or no question.
No. Yes or no questions have no function here. So we have to wrap up, but I want to talk briefly about a very special contest that you won when you were younger that demonstrated a very special skill that people don't have in this part of the country. And I was
modeling, right? Because this face.
No. It's a very specific talent that you use kind of in
small teeth contest. Wow, he won. He has the smallest teeth in America.
No, it's one that takes place in a rural setting generally, and it involves
hog calling. Yeah. I was state champion hog calling.
So I was wondering if you could just give us a sample of your skills.
Okay. Suey. That was a long time ago, you know. I still have the trophy.
Great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much
Thank you, guys.
for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.